Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mila, you're at my book nook, and today we have a video of where I wanted to just talk about like my favorite fantasy worlds. And as you can see, the lighting is a little bit off. That's because I ran out of sunlight before I decided to film. So we're improvising until I figure out a proper lighting setup because I don't have any proper like lights, so to speak. So I'm just experimenting and hoping that this doesn't look like absolute and utter crap. So without further ado, let's get started. So I have just like a list of fantasy worlds that I really like, that I think are really unique, I think are really fun, I think are really interesting in general, and I'm just going to talk about them because I thought this would be a fun video to do. So the first one I have, I'm going to start bottom up because the last one is one I think that a lot of people will agree on. So the first one I have is An Ember in the Ashes. I thought that this was such an interesting world. Now, it's been a minute since I've read An Ember in the Ashes. Just the first book, or like I never really finished the series, and I know there's a a sequel series, and I should probably get to that. So one day. But I remember really enjoying the world that the author built, and I thought it was very well done. Like there is, sometimes you have this sort of disconnect, especially in fantasy books, you have this sort of disconnect between the character building and the world building, where sometimes the book focuses on more characters and less world, which is fine. But then that also makes way for a complete lack of world building where the world is very bland. And if there are rules, or I guess a so called attempt to make the world a little richer, then it is poorly done because all the focus is on the character, and that doesn't leave enough room for the world to be properly expanded on. And if there are rules, there are constant contradictions because the author has a difficult time to keep those rules in check. Light Lark. So like you have something like An Ember in the Ashes, where it's a Rome inspired, I want to say if I remember correctly, world where there's a military academy, and the world makes sense. The world makes sense. That's the thing with all these books, like the world to a certain extent makes sense in the whole wider context of the story. Even if the book itself is character driven, you still have that world almost as a character in of itself, if that makes sense. So that's An Ember in the Ashes. The second one I have is One Dark Window. Oh my god, I ate this book up. I ate this book up so fast, so hard. Wow. The moment that Carrie from Carrie Can Read recommended this, oh my god, I read it so fast. I ate it up. I haven't read the second one. I need to reread the first one. We'll get there. But oh my gosh, I just remember loving, maybe it wasn't fully gothic, but just loving the dark, almost grimy, with a little bit of flair vibes. And oh my god, the atmosphere, I ate it up. Ate it up. One Dark Window is a fantasy that follows this girl, Elspeth, who has a monster in her head. And the most interesting thing about this book is, and I'm giving more information on this because than Ember in the Ashes, because it's been a longer time since I read An Ember in the Ashes, and I don't remember, I barely remember any of it. Let me know if you want a vlog for An Ember in the Ashes. Please say yes. Please say yes. Please say yes. Please say yes. But for One Dark Window, there is a card magic system, but it's not our cards. No. The author made up the card magic system. Like, how cool is that? How big brained are you? Like, that's insane to create a magic system based on a whole new set of cards. I can't even create a magic system based on the cards we have now, like the playing cards we have now. I can't do that. Never mind tarot cards. She creates a whole new magic system. Like, that's crazy talk. Like, come on. That's insane. That's awesome. Like, honestly, kudos to Rachel Gillick. She's amazing. Then we have Air Awakens. Air Awakens is basically, and I mean this with all respect to both creators of both medias, it's Avatar: The Last Airbender minus the Airbender, minus Okay, it's Avatar The Last Airbender minus the Avatar in book format. Yeah, I think that's how I would say it. Because basically we follow our main character whose name I've forgotten, but anyways, we follow our main character who is a librarian. Like she's, well, not a librarian. She's like a library assistant, and she, works in this like imperial library or whatever the hell, and they're like two prince brothers and all that stuff, and she's like a poor girl and everything. I think she's like an orphan or something like that. Turns out she's the last air, what are they called, walker? She's the last airbender. Okay, she's the last airbender. And honestly, that sets the whole precedent for the story. She's the last airbender, and she finds it out through a slightly brutal way, to be honest. Like, she literally gets pushed off a roof. I still don't know how I feel about that, but I ate the series up. It's 5 books. I read it in like 2 weeks. It took me like 2 weeks to read the book. Like, all the books. Insane. Bam, 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 bam. I honestly think that it would have fit better as a trilogy, but I get why it was stretched out into 5 books. I didn't enjoy the last 2 as much, but I did enjoy the overall arc of our main character. I enjoyed. Then we have Stormlight Archive. Now, Stormlight Archive is a given. I read all 5 Stormlight books, which is crazy to say considering this is one of 3 series on here that I read fully. Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. See, yeah, I'm not going to go into like, too much of the details, but Stormlight Archive is really interesting. Basically, Brandon Sanderson has created the Cosmere. Think of it as the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of the books. You have a bunch of different stories happening at almost the same time, right? You have some stories that happen way before a certain story, you have some stories that happen way after, you have some stories that happen in between events, right? So on this planet called Roshar, we follow this cast of characters that are in this, we follow the humans, essentially, right? Let's put it out, the humans, right? They have their own, sort of separations, so to speak. Some are like Asian features, some have like, more European features, etc., etc. And they are segregated, essentially. They're separated by eye color. So if you have blue eyes or green eyes, you're a light eyes. If you have brown or black eyes, or like, I don't know, hazel eyes, I guess, you are a dark eyes. And dark eyes are the lower tier. So what's up? Dark eyes here. But basically, there are these storms that ravage this world, and to essentially go and be left in the storm is basically your like a death sentence. So it's crazy. And so we follow a cast of characters that have to deal with these storms, and there's this sort of war brewing because one of the kings was like assassinated ages ago, and then there's like shard blades that they fight for and sharp blades that they fight for, and they're basically fed by this like storm power. I'm not explaining this very correctly. See, the thing about Stormlight Archive is you really need to go into it as blind as possible. And I don't say this lightly because I'm aware that Stormlight Archive is in fact, I just realized this is very high. I apologize. Stormlight Archive, each book is over 1,000 pages, and I realize that is a commitment. A commitment which I had committed to for 5 months of my life last year. Video down below, I have vlogs for each book. But so I realize that it's a commitment, but the world is so cool because you can have, like, if you have the physical copies, even in the digital ones, if you have the physical copies, you have like drawings from like specific people and also from a specific character who is an artist. Like, she's a sketch, she sketches a lot, she's a really good artist, and it just makes the world so much richer, and it's just so cool. Bring back drawings in fantasy books besides maps. That's what we need to do. I rambled on enough about Stormlight. Then we have A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this once. I do not want to hear, but Martin hasn't finished this year. I don't care. I'm reading the second book right now, or at least attempting to, because I'm kind of in a reading slump. Does that make sense? Like, I just don't want to read anything. I don't have the brain power to even think of picking up a book. It'll pass. It will pass. But A Song of Ice and Fire is George R. R. Martin's magnum opus. It is It is one of the most beloved and also it's probably like one of the most controversial fantasy book series, and I think part of that controversy mainly stems from the fact that he has taken so long to write the last two books. Like that is like 90% of the controversy. If that controversy had been resolved, at the pace that Martin should have done it, if, then it wouldn't have been, I think, as polarizing. So I think the fact that he hasn't finished gives it even more. I don't even know if it's a bad rep or a good rep, but it's a rep. It's it's something. A Song of Ice and Fire is really interesting because you have, and this is the books we're talking about, you have this world where in the past you had these people who were literally like bonded to dragons. Like they went to war with these dragons. If you had a dragon on your side, the other side was cooked. They were roasted. Okay, they were barbecue dinner for these dragons. They were roasted, toasted. Okay, I hope that I have drilled that into your brain. So you had these people, notably the Targaryens, right? And so later on, this is, I would say like 200, not even years later, you have a cast of characters. One of, like, the king dies. And so they're essentially fighting over the Iron Throne, which is this big throne made of swords. And the fan art is really cool for this. But basically, you have a bunch of houses fighting over the throne because the brother of the king says that he's the rightful heir, and then it's like the son of the king, but he's not actually the son of the king, he's actually a product of incest, but that's a whole other thing. It's actually insane. And if we I know that Martin has been talked about and ranted about and analyzed and psychoanalyzed probably through his writing, but frankly, I can probably look past some of the stuff. Maybe not the like intensely graphic smut scenes that make me borderline uncomfortable, so I just like glaze over it. But it's a good book. It's a good series. Like, you cannot tell me that Martin is a bad writer. He might have made some, I don't know, controversial choices in the way that he represents his characters, but you cannot tell me that that man is a bad writer. He is not a bad writer. He has created such a rich world and has added so much substance to it. It's insane. Like, I really hope to have that much talent in one single cell of my body. Like, I'm so serious. I've rambled on for too long about A Song of Ice and Fire as well. Then we have Eye of the World. Now, I'm gonna say this with a caveat because I have only read the first book. I've only watched like the first 2 episodes of the show. I'm not going to continue the show because it was canceled, so it's like, what the point? What's the point? Also, screw you, Amazon. To the gates of hell. Like, actually. I was watching Daniel Green's summary and I'd gotten to book 2. I started book 2, but it was, my god, it was so long. It was so long, but I really love the intricacies of the Eye of the World, because if you were reading it at the time as it was publishing, that's insane. That is an insane world building, A, commitment, and B, insane world building choices. What do you mean the men go mad and the women do not when they're using the magic? Like, that is an insane choice, because in a patriarchal society, the woman would go right and the men wouldn't, right? The men would be the stable magic users. But no. In Eye of the World, to put it simply, the men go mad. The men go crazy. They go, they go nuts up, right? So Eye of the World is such an interesting one because it's an outlier essentially for the time that it was written, and so reminiscent of Lord of the Rings. My god, it felt like a love letter to the Lord of the Rings while still doing something incredibly original. And rest in peace, Robert Jordan. Wow, that was a talent, truly. Then we have the Old Kingdom series, specifically the trilogy Sabriel, Lyriel, and Eporus. And as I've said many times before, I do not plan on reading the other 3 books because I'm simply not interested. This is such an interesting world because instead of necromancers being the ones that raise the dead, there are necromancers that raise the dead, but in this specific case, the Eporus, the necromancer, puts the dead to sleep. which is such an interesting subversion of the word necromancer. They deal with the dead, right? But for modern minds, you would think that it's raising the dead, but it's actually not. They're putting the dead back to sleep. And it's such an interesting subversion of this term. And this was such a fantastic series. And I truly think about it every single day. And it's perfect for like the dark days that we have ahead, notably how it's literally, let me tell you what time it is. It is so depressing. It is 7 o'clock and it is pitch black outside. I'm hanging on by two lights and the light of my computer. Okay, I'm hanging on by a thread. It's 7 o'clock. Why is it pitch black when it's 7? Anyways, the Old Kingdom series is really interesting because you have this wall dividing the essentially modern world with no magic, where magic can function very close to the wall, but it's very murky. It's very unpredictable. And then you have the other side, and Celestier, the Old Kingdom, where magic roams, and they're sort of like stuck in like the medieval ages, I want to say. Not really the medieval ages, but you get what I mean, right? And that was such an interesting divide to see. I really enjoyed reading that. So the last book I have for the last top 10, top whatever fantasy worlds I have is, I mean, can we guess? Drumroll, please. Lord of the Rings. Now, Lord of the Rings is something I have always loved. I don't remember the first time that I've watched the movies, but I remember that I have watched it every single year since. And I've upgraded to the extended editions, obviously, doy. And I watched Two Towers and Return of the King in movie theaters, the extended editions, which was phenomenal, just like crazy. Just this, oh my god, I want to experience it again. Please release it. Oh my god, that was such an experience. I will never get that moment. I dream about that day still. And I proceeded to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm supposed to be reading the first book in Russian, but that's on pause right now. It's really difficult. It's not easy at all. I'm going to tell you right now. But Lord of the Rings is such an interesting book because this was truly told, like, when we say that a work is someone's lifeline for Tolkien, it truly is. It truly was his whole life. He was this accomplished person and he created such a deep and profound world that, you know, everyone loves to this day, and it's just so phenomenal. And the friendships and the relationships and the whole sort of notion of good versus evil, of like love always wins, but also like friendship wins, and good, being truly good in your heart and in your actions, will always win, even at the bleakest of moments. Like, this just, oh man, it's just so, I cannot explain how much this world means to me. Like, it truly found me at the books specifically found me at the perfect moment, and I cannot be more thankful to Tolkien and also the publishers that took a chance on him for publishing these books, for publishing the story. And I know this is getting emotional, but man, Lord of the Rings changed my life. Like, it truly did. I talk about it all the time now, but I will never shut up about it. And my kids will grow up reading Lord of the Rings. My sister, I am getting my sister into Lord of the Rings. She will get into it very early. I wish I had someone who I could say loved Lord of the Rings, the book specifically, as much as I do now, but I do not. So I'm going to become that person. I'm going to be the crazy aunt, the crazy sister, so to speak, who the very, very informed, Lord of the Rings fan friend. That's what I'm going to be. And that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I know it's a bit rambling, but I thought it would be a fun video to do. So with that being said, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down below. Give me other fantasy worlds that you love that I might have not talked about, and I will see you in the next one. Happy reading!